Of another, she's in the struggle still. She's a wobbly organizer and she's too tough to kill. Her name is Judy Bari, she's a leader in the fight to preserve the redwood forest and defend the workers' rights.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to welcome you all to this evening and thank you very much for coming to have this night remembering Judy. I also wanted to let you know a couple of things, just housekeeping, before I turn it over to our wonderful panelists.
And you are?
I'm Karen Matson, and I had the pleasure of working with Daryl and Alicia to curate this exhibit. So it's been a pleasure and an honor. But what I wanted to make sure that everyone knows is that after our talk tonight, the museum will be closed. I'm happy to escort anybody to the exit sign that way. But you're also welcome to leave through the parking lot over there. Yes? Will there be possibly a 5-minute bathroom break? Oh, so and that is the other, I wanted everyone to know the bathroom is right here. Oh. I didn't announce that last time. That's very helpful information. So there's a restroom here. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our guests. All right? Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for coming to the second one of our panels here at the 6-week exhibit. And Mendocino County remembers the bombing of Judy Bari. I'll repeat myself a little bit from last week because I think it's worth saying again that Judy, who had just the most amazing sense of humor, perhaps did one of the funniest things ever after she passed away. She wrote a will before she passed. And then after she passed, the Willits Museum, the Mendocino County Museum at Willits, was notified that she had left them, without their permission and without their knowledge, the bombed car.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
And, one thing about museums that sort of it just occurred to me after the fact was, they do house large things, dinosaurs, bomb cars, things like that. So fortunately, they were able to house the bomb car, along with a whole mess of Judy's archives, which are in the back room somewhere. And Russ and Sylvia helped to, along with myself, helped to organize them. And so the Willits Museum does have a real Judy Bari archive here, thanks also in part to Alicia Littletree, who helped get them some of those materials. So it has been a pleasure to work with the museum. I've never helped curate anything in my life before.
There's a song in that.
There is. So let me just introduce the panelists really quickly. There is Linda Perkins and Bill Heil from Albion. There's Daphne Martin, also from Albion. Naomi Wagner, both from Mendocino County and Humboldt County. Larry the Wall Evans, Judy Bari's bodyguard and friend, my friend, and one of the founders of Headwaters Forest, one of the people who created the Headwaters Forest Reserve, along with Greg King and Kurt Newman, the late great Kurt Newman, and the late Bill DeVal and Todd Swarthout. We don't know if he's alive or not, do we?
We'll assume so.
We'll assume so. There you go. The older you get, the more people you know who are dead. It's just one of those things. Everybody nods their head. Alicia Littletree, Judy Bari's, I like to say she's Judy Bari's protege, lived with Judy for the last few years of her life, lived with Judy more than anybody else except for her children. And was with Judy when she passed away at that actual moment, and wrote a beautiful song about that she will be performing along with some other songs she wrote about Judy next week, because next week we have songs by and about Judy Bari featuring Alicia Littletree, Bear Dyken from Clan Dyken, Ellen Taylor, I forgot to mention, put her on the poster, but Ellen Taylor from Petrolia wrote a beautiful funeral song for Judy. I beg your pardon? Mokai, yes, thank you very much. My cue card. My cue card has purple hair. Another song.
Yeah. Purple hair.
Edie Morris, who has sung with me quite a bit, and a great friend of Judy's. The very first time I met Judy Bari was when she was singing with Edie Morris here in Ukiah, just down the road. And Judy, Edie, of course, used to be with the new Christy Minstrels, and was her maiden name was Kellogg, as in the Kellogg's of Battle Creek, but she does not have their money, so you don't need to hit on her or anything. And
These are old jokes.
no.
Oh.
And let's see.
Francine and Nemaya.
Francine and Nemaya are coming. Francine and Nemaya, who actually met during a tour. I asked both of them to sing backup with me as we were touring pre-Redwood Summer, and I asked them if they would sing together, and they've been singing together ever since. And then I will also be there and closing the show with about as many, I only have like 30 or 40 songs about Judy, so we'll try to keep it down to a minimum. So that's why I'm going to go last. So I'm going to start off with how I met Judy Bari, and then we're going to just pass it down the line just like this. Besides that, Judy Bari opened for me as I was opening for Bill Oliver at Earth First Road Show in Ukiah. The first time I really met Judy Bari was in March of 1988 when I was running for Congress as the singing candidate. Yeah.
That's enough clapping for that.
Thank you. And so I was getting my brochure together, and this was long before Photoshop, not that I even know Photoshop now, but long before computer graphics were really in style. And I was trying to get all my pictures and my lines. I had those little rub-off lines and rub-off letterings that you used to do when you made brochures. And I've always been really bad with straight lines. And I said to Betty Ball, gee, I really wish I had a graphic artist to help me. And she said, Betty Ball, the co-founder of the Mendocino Environmental Center. She said, I know this really great graphic artist, and her name is Judy Bari, and in fact, here she comes now. And in through the door on cue, like a giant gust of wind, blew Judy Bari into the door. And we were introduced now a little more formally than that show when we met briefly. And she immediately looked at me. She knew me by reputation. And she said, what kind of idiot do you think you are running for Congress? You don't actually think you're going to win. You don't think you're actually going to change anything if you do go to Congress. And what are you wasting your time for? You should be up in a tree. And for about the next half hour, she berated me as she laid out my brochure. And when she was finished, I just looked up to her, and I was at the time, I was shy with women, and it was for the longest time before that, and I just looked up at her after she was done reaming me a new one. I looked up at her, and I said, can I come to your house? Because I had fallen in love at first sight, or at least at first insult. And then I did go to her house. And and she said, yes, and she said this to me probably throughout her entire life. She said, yes, you can come, but I'm not going to cook you dinner. And one thing to know about Judy Bari, amongst the many, many other things, great things about her, is Judy was an amazing cook, and she used to like to brag about how she could crimp a pie. She was an astounding homemaker, and she was an incredible gardener, along with everything else, all very true. So I got to her house, and that's where I saw the wall of books, the wall of labor history books. I mean, a library full of labor history books. And so I said, well, if I had to read one of them, which one would it be? And it was Labor's Untold Story that she passed on to me. And I read that, and that's what I realized, reading it, just without any prompting, that Earth First was a descendant of the IWW, the Wobblies, the Industrial Workers of the World. The Radical Labor Union, founded in 1905 by Mother Jones, Big Bill Haywood, Eugene Debs, who ran for president 4 times, got 1 million votes the last time he ran for president, in prison in Leavenworth for sedition for opposing World War I. That was how he ran for president. And but I realized that we were the descendant of the Wobblies, who advocated sabotage in defense of their cause, who pretty much invented the sticker and the silent agitator, the black cat, the symbol of sabotage. And most importantly about the Wobblies was their music, their songs. And Joe Hill, of course, was their premier songwriter, who wrote so many incredible songs. There's Power in the Union and so many other, Rebel Gal, about Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, who was also a union organizer. And on down the line. So they were the singing union as well, and they were the union that first organized industrial workers, because the AFL was only organizing skilled workers, electricians, shoemakers, people, mechanics, people who could do, but not the people who worked in the mills, whether it was the mines or the textile mills. And they were also the first union who organized the Chinese, African Americans, women, the first union to do that, the Radical Labor Union, the IWW. And that's when I saw the lineage between the IWW and the Earth First. It was as clear as day. Later on, and we'll get to that later, Judy Bari brought us together, not just with the IWW, but also with union organizing of the sawmill workers and the loggers through the IWW, actually. But I'm going to leave it at there, except to say that that's how I met Judy Bari. That was pretty much the first day. And it was an amazing ride ever since. And maybe I'll just say this one thing, that after Judy Bari passed away in 1997, one little story. But my initial reaction was, what was that? what just happened? It was like, wow, what was that? That meteor, that comet that just went by. But I gathered up all my Judy Bari paraphernalia, and I went up to Eureka to do some press conferences, because I am the media slut. And I went up, and Judy hated the media. She hated the media. And so I went up to Eureka, and I did 2 interviews with Channel 6 and Channel 3, Channel 6, the CBS affiliate, and the camera woman put the camera on the two of us, because they only have one, and she put it on us, and she started interviewing me. And I said, well, Judy Bari also wrote a book, Timber Wars, here it is, And I said, hey, let's take a look. And I pulled a chapter up for her, and right there, without it, just pulled open the book, and there it was, Why I Hate the Corporate Press. And Judy Bari has been with us ever since, and that's one of the ways that we know she is still there. So thank you very much. So I'm going to introduce you now to Alicia Littletree, who I actually already introduced, and she lived with Judy Bari for the longest times, and so here she is, Alicia.
Hi, everyone. It's interesting. I'm so excited about tonight because I've been a spokesperson for Earth First in Judy's case against the FBI, but I don't remember anyone ever asking me about her. And so I'm so excited to get to talk with you about her. I met Judy when I was 17, and we were very close until her death in 1997. So for 6 years of my life, I had this meteor from age 17 to 20, just before my 23rd birthday, from 1991 to 1997. So of course, the bombing happened in 1990. And I heard about it when I was in high school in Sacramento. I remember the news story on the television and going, huh? Well, that doesn't sound right. And then a year later, there I was with Judy and Daryl and Earth First up here in the Redwoods. My affinity group in Sacramento was called the Ad Hoc Committee for Peace. We were organizing, we came together, a group of anarchists around the first Gulf War with Bush 1. And we were very much like Earth First. I remember one of my favorite actions we did was called the War is Uncouth. And we did a fashion show with gas masks and dogs and white wigs piled up on our heads through the Fab 40s in Sacramento. We ended up with a fashion show, an anti-war demonstration at the Rose Garden, very much in line with Earth First. And I remember seeing an Earth First shirt at one of the meetings. Somebody was wearing an Earth First shirt, and I thought, oh my God, I'm with the real radicals now. And so that was appealing to me. And so our affinity group came up here in the aftermath of Redwood Summer in 1991 to what they called Redwood Summer 2, which was a base camp in Honeydew where all hell broke loose. I kid you not. My affinity group went on these blockades where some of you were here for that. They were heave-ho, thrown into ditches, they were punched in the face. It was terrifying. The violence was still at a fever pitch. And the thing that I remember most about Redwood Summer 2 was the campfire that night. And you and all the guys with guitars and Judy fiddling, and I was hooked. This was it. I'd already been organizing in Sacramento, but this is what This is where I wanted to be. And so we went back down to Sacramento. We did a famous action at the state capitol with lockdowns on the Statue of Columbus and a Headwaters banner around the rotunda. And I was part of the affinity group that did the interpretive dance and mud person action on the lawn of the front steps of the Capitol. And I'm telling you, a bunch of teenage girls covered in mud with hardly anything on. We cleared out security. I remember a saxophone. I don't know. We were like interpretive dancing on the lawn. Anyway, so at some point, me and my co-revolutionary Felix looked at each other and we thought, screw this, we want to be in there with where the action is. So we ran we said, we're going to get mud on the floor. We ran into the rotunda and were instantly arrested. Like, boom, straight into the arms of the police and downstairs. And I was sent to juvenile hall. And when my mom showed up at juvenile hall, she was not pleased. And basically said, I'm not proud of what you're doing, so get out. And so I came back up here. And I ended up in Garberville. I know I'm talking about myself. Sorry, I'll get to Judy in a second, but this is kind of important. So I ended up in Garberville. I called Tracy Cattleman, and they're like, oh, great, come to the Earth First office in Garberville, and which was the back garage at Alternative Energy Engineering, and I'd like step over charging batteries in there. And they put me up. Tracy put me to work, of course. If you know Tracy, she'll put you to work. And then here I was in Southern Humboldt County, and I started going to Earth First meetings. And I would wait, because in the old days we didn't have email, and I didn't have a phone, so I would wait for Judy's meeting notices, right? And they would come in the mail. And they'd be like, look, Judy's little handwriting on the envelope, and then you'd open it up, Earth First meeting, Willits Environmental Center, next Thursday, like, yes, I get to go to an Earth First meeting. So I started going, that's when I met Naomi, and I started going to these meetings, and that's when I first saw Judy. That's when I first remember seeing Judy. And she was at the WEC, the old WEC, which was what Tsunami, what's the name of the restaurant now? Oh, it's empty. Okay, well, it used to be the Tsunami, the restaurant. But before that, it was the WEC. And she was sitting on the couch, and she was kind of holding court, of course, as she did at an Earth First meeting. And so I would just start coming down to the Earth First meetings. I got to know the Earth First organizers, and I got to know, well, basically, I didn't even speak in a meeting for the first 6 months. I just wanted to learn from these guys. It was thrilling. It was so exciting for a young 17-year-old wannabe revolutionary. So when I remember really bonding with Judy was her car had gotten messed up. Like somebody had broken her transmission. And so I remember what it was, but it's not important. And so she needed a ride home. And so I drove her home after an Earth First meeting in Willits. And I was living in Garberville, but I drove her up String Creek Road to her house, and then she invited me inside, and I sat on that little pink chair in her cabin, and we talked until, 4 in the morning, and we just, it was like that. It was like we just clicked. We clicked around feminism in particular, because I was a young woman in a male-dominated movement, and I was struggling, and she understood, and it was, just love. And so from then on, I was around a lot. And Judy needed someone at her house to help her. So I would come and help around the house and work on different tasks. But it wasn't until the Albion Uprising that I really got to work with her in the field, and then after the Albion Uprising, I moved in with her and her family. The Albion Uprising, I just want to say a couple things about my experience with Judy in the Albion Uprising. So the Albion Uprising was this amazing community uprising. Bill and Linda and Daphne and Naomi you were part of it too. Were you? It was on the coast. LP was logging in a beloved area to the Albion community, the Enchanted Meadow. And we've been planning for something. We've been doing meetings all fall. We had all of these plans. We were going to, start organizing actions in the spring. Well, LP goes into this area and starts cutting mature second growth redwoods in the Enchanted Meadow. And so we started blockading them. And there were, the Albion Uprising was 16 tree sits in all in this one timber harvest plan. We were, we were dozens of arrests. We were out there every day blockading, tons of music, tons of laughter, and just an amazing, just an amazing experience for, I wasn't even out of high school yet. In fact, I sat in a tree for 9 days, and I wrote one of my final papers for California history was the history of LP in California. Learned a lot. Anyway, my experience with Judy is that she consistently encouraged me, a teenage young woman, to leadership, and consistently commended and supported my being a spokesperson, made sure that I was on the outings with the company or the outings with the judge or whatever, treated me like my voice mattered. Okay, and so I already loved her, but when someone does that to you, that is magic. That is like the special magic thing that can change a young woman's life. And she was also a very active leader in the Albion Uprising and very deliberate in her strategizing. She was and this is my experience with her. I know everybody has their own kind of version of this, but from 30 years ago, this is what I remember, that I remember when we were slap sued by Louisiana Pacific, and they sued 10 named defendants and 100 John and Jane Does, and then they gave the named defendants a list of questions that they had to ask about who all the other people were involved in the Albion Uprising, and it caused a lot of dissension and a lot of fear because people didn't want to be snitched on, basically. And Judy went back to her labor books from that bookshelf that Daryl was talking about. She had these chat books from the strikes in Flint, Michigan, from the sit-down strikes, and she just had like this collection that she had gathered. And unions making chat books about strategies and outcomes from their workplace actions is really a cool thing, and we should do that too, so that the generations after us can learn what worked and what didn't. She consulted those books, and she decided that we could not let them divide us from each other, so she proposed a yes we did confession action, and we all filled out these confession forms, and we went to the courthouse in Ukiah, and we confessed our sins on the courthouse steps, and so the people who confessed could be put into the interrogatories and given to LP, and the people who didn't want to be named were protected from that, and so no one had to snitch. And in fact, we had this action. We were so proud to admit what we'd done, including thought crimes against LP. And the other thing about the Albion Uprising with Judy is that it's where I got my name. Daryl and I wrote this song called Twinkle Twinkle Little Tree, but when it came to my tree sit name, Little Tree was my CB handle, and afterwards Judy said, you know what, you should keep that. That's really cool. You should be Alicia Little Tree. And so I was. And still are. Still am. Still is. Okay, so after the Albion Uprising, I'll try to make this go quicker. I moved in with Judy and her daughters, Jessie and Lisa, and that was when, she needed another person there. She was severely disabled from the bombing, and so, things like she would haul in firewood. I don't know how she did it, but she needed help with that stuff. She needed an able-bodied adult, and I was pretty much an adult. I mean, I was 18, 19 at that time, and at that time, one of the questions that I had was wanting to maybe leave here and go to college, and she was like, oh, God, no, please, no, don't leave. So I look back on it, I'm like, interesting. But she said, we can make a college for you. We'll have Judy University. You can learn the stuff you need to know in Judy. And so, interesting, Daryl's story about the labor books. So she started giving me books to read. And that continued throughout our relationship, including toward the end when she was very sick. We would read to each other. And we read Emma Goldman's, we tried to read Emma Goldman's autobiography, but it was all about men and boys, and so we didn't get through that. We weren't really that interested in the romantic side. We wanted the political side. So then we read David Hilliard's autobiography from the Black Panther Party. We read Assata, about Assata Shakur. We just dug in to these different movements and talked about it. The other thing that we did together while I was living with her is that she was getting discovery from her FBI case. So the case had been filed in May of 1991.
Yes, just before the 1 year.
And so the discovery process had started probably around 1992, which means that they were making all these document requests, and they had a ton of questions, obviously, about what the hell the FBI had done in the aftermath of the bombing, when they were framing Judy and Daryl, but also before the bombing, including the question, were they already investigating Judy and Daryl, and were Judy and Daryl under surveillance at the time of the bombing? And if so, were they surveilling the car that night in Oakland, because they tend to do a pretty total cover on people who are the targets of surveillance. So it was a scary time. But Judy was so determined. Nothing was going to stop her from pursuing that case. Thank God, because after she died, everything that she did, all the work that she did, got us ready to take it to trial. With that, so she was getting these documents, big tranches, I guess is the word for it, big boxes full of thousands of pages, and they weren't in order. She had to sort them, she had to read them, she had to analyze them and organize them and turn them into something that people could understand. She was doing that while I was sitting at the table working on other projects. And she'd be reading it, she'd go, oh my God, listen to this. Well, and she was starting to put this picture together, and this also continued the whole time. So I learned the case as she did. The other thing that I did with Judy is I drove her down to court hearings and to depositions. So we would talk about what was going to be happening in the court hearing or in the deposition. Depositions are when you question their side under oath. And we would debrief about the thing on the way back. So I really learned the case from her as she was sort of putting all together what had happened. She also encouraged me to tour with her. And one of the things that she did as a mentor was that she paid for me to have guitar lessons. Seriously, she took it seriously talking about young people in the movement. She thought the movement wasn't alive unless young people were in it and were in leadership. So she just systematically tried to give me the tools that I needed to be a successful organizer, including music, and accompanying her on her speaking tours, and other organizing skills. At some point, when I was living with her in Willits the first time, I had this feeling about Headwaters Forest, and I just felt like I wanted to go up and organize around Headwaters Forest, probably because of the amazing work that you did, letting us know that Headwaters was threatened. Pacific Lumber owned it, and I just felt that was the next place, that was the next front line after Albion. And so I moved out of her house and moved up to Southern Humboldt to organize around Headwaters, and she and I worked hand in glove around building that campaign together, the Earth First part of the Headwaters campaign, including the, she would be like, what we really need to do? We need to shut them down. We need to shut down, the whole company at once. And I was like, ooh, I know how we can do that, and so we would we had this really wonderful, synergistic, and very exciting relationship. And also she was incredible at media and fundraising. So she enabled the kind of crazy schemes that we came up with for shutting down Pacific Lumber on the front lines, including the strategy of, we would open up these base camps at campgrounds and invite people from all over the state to come in. And we did warm-up base camps, leading up to September 15th, the marble murrelet nesting season. End when they would start to log, so we would kind of ramp up to it, and then when September 15th came along, we would invite everybody to this huge action, and we did this massive arrest in 1996, but we had sort of a mini one in 1995 where Judy got arrested too, and we were just organizing all the time, and we were going for it. We wanted everybody. We wanted as many people as possible. We were doing it full time and really systematically with our collective and with our organizing affinity group and using the consensus process in that. So it was in 1996, after the arrests, the 1,033 arrests in the Headwaters campaign, that Judy had really shifted around that time. She didn't want me doing clerical and kind of filing tasks anymore. She wanted, and she was very deliberate and a little mean about it, but she wanted me out, basically on speaking tours. She wanted me out on road shows. She wanted me, because I would be like, couldn't I just do these copies? And she's like, no, you need to go and organize that road show. So So I was on a speaking tour on the Northwest about the bombing case. So I had been organizing around Headwaters, but she was really like, no, I want you to take a much more hands-on, upfront role on the bombing case. So I had organized my first speaking tour. Francine and Amaya were the musicians that came with me, and I spoke for an hour about the bombing case, and people listened, and it was amazing for me. And I called her when I got back to Eureka, and I said, I did it. I spoke for an hour about the bombing case. She said, of course you did. Of course you did. Yeah, I knew you would. And then she said, sit down. I've got something to tell you. And I hadn't even been home, and that's when she told me about her cancer. So at that point, besides, the top priority, which was making sure that her family is okay, and that her daughters are going to be taken care of, her second priority was making sure that lawsuit was in a place that we could win it. We would take it all the way. And so since I had learned the case, she trusted me to know what to do with the evidence in the case. And so in that same will where she left the car, she left me the files, all those files that we had built together largely. And she actually said she felt guilty about it. I was very young, and she said she felt guilty and didn't want to saddle me with this thing. But I was like, shut up. I'm going to do it. I'm doing this. I want to say one thing about Judy and the case. When I first met Dennis Cunningham, who Judy and Dennis are the two most extraordinary people I've ever known. The reason I met him is because he came up. We were going to go look at the car, which was in storage for the first time, which you will see in there if you haven't already gone to look at it. And she had already found out about the FBI's bomb expert, David R. Williams, who had done this whole thing in the Oakland impound lot where he built, a mock-up bomb, and you can see the pictures in the evidence file. He placed it all these different places. He placed it where they said it was in the search warrant affidavit, and the hole is whoosh, up there. And then he placed it where it actually was, and the hole's around that, But one of the things that he's the one who told them that it was a ball-bearing motion trigger that ignited the bomb, or that triggered the bomb. So it was a motion device that had made the bomb explode. But he's also identified these things called the end cap impact points. So, there's a mock-up of the bomb in there. The end cap, I guess that the threading is a weak spot. I hate bombs, I hate violence, I hate guns. But now I know this stuff, it's weird. So I guess that's the weak part. And so the ends blow off in either direction and make an impact in the metal. And so it places it definitively, no question at all, right underneath the car seat. And they would have known that because this is basic, Bomb 101, easy stuff that they know to look for. Well, so we go up to the secret garage in Leggett where the car's been stored. Pull open the garage door. Judy goes strutting in. That awful, crumpled, violent thing. She goes strutting in there. She goes, oh, look, and she steps into the hole. She hasn't seen it since the bombing in Oakland. She hasn't seen this car. She steps into the hole. She puts her cane into the end cap impact point. And she goes, there it is. There's the end cap impact point. And Dennis is standing there looking at her with his jaw dropped. Who is this woman? She was not messing around. No time to take a pause and, feel the terror of it, just going straight in. There's the end cap impact point. So the last thing I want to say about Judy is that when Judy died, well, first of all, we took her deposition from the FBI about 4 weeks before she died. And that was taken in the Ukiah Valley Conference Center in Ukiah, which I live now 1 block away from. And I walk by it every day. And I can't be there without remembering that crazy day where, she was so ill. And she knew she was not going to live till trial, but she wanted to testify about what had happened to her. So they did a recorded deposition. Video recording. She had her pillow. She was reclined. You probably saw it if you were at the trial. And they wouldn't let me stay in the room with her because they were cruel. And so I sat out on the step and just like a, loyal little puppy, I guess, sat on the step all day long, both days, and just was there, just was there with her. And, she was exhausted after it each day, but she did it. She testified. And, they never asked her a single question in that deposition.
Not one.
Dennis did all of the questioning. And then they turned it over to the FBI and Oakland police, who had smeared Judy and Daryl as terrorists, refused to investigate this assassination attempt. No questions from the federal defendants, no questions from the Oakland defendants. She was horrified. But at least she got a chance to say the truth of what had happened to her. When she died, the world changed for me. I thought that much, much less was possible. She was one of those people. She was a leader who made the world different for me, and for many of us, I think. I thought anything was possible when Judy was alive. She was the most powerful, most brilliant, most uncompromising, most delightfully fun, most loving person I have ever, and also she fought a lot too. We really all fought a lot. But anyway, when she died, that for me, it took a long time for me to kind of believe that we could still win anything, right? We could win anything when Judy was alive, but could we really win anything after Judy died? And I remember that first day of jury selection in the FBI case, I was dressed in a suit. I was sitting at the table with the lawyers, and we were about to go into jury selection in Oakland in a federal courtroom against the FBI. And I was like, what the hell am I doing here? This is about to happen. And, this moment of disbelief, and then I just thought about Judy. And there was no way we weren't going to go forward just like she did. We were going to live in her example. We were going to win that case. There was no way we were going to lose Judy's case after all that she'd been through and all of the work that she'd done to get it ready for us. And so we just took one step after the other, and we just fought like hell every minute of every day of that trial. And at the end, the jury brought back the verdict, which was that they were guilty and they were liable for the civil rights abuses. Judy won. Of course Judy won. Of course she did. So with that, instead of feeling like this is a world where we can't win, we can fight in Judy's example and keep her alive through our commitment and our love to the things that she loved. So thank you.
Thank you. Larry Evans is next. Larry Evans was both Judy Barry's bodyguard and friend, and my bodyguard and friend, and I think perhaps even for both of us, certainly for me, Larry's job as bodyguard was to protect everybody else from me. And I've watched Larry do amazing things. He actually was professional security bodyguard for a number of, celebrities. And when he was deposed by the FBI, and when they asked him, what got you into being a bodyguard? Well, Larry's a man of few words. I'm kind of interesting to see what he has to say today. But he said, what was the reason you got into being a bodyguard? And he said, rock and roll. And then when they asked him about his first tree sit, the FBI asked him about his first tree sit under deposition, and that he had gotten up in the tree with Kurt Newman and
Daryl Sukovitz,
but they didn't get to spend the night, or they spent the night, but they didn't get the platforms up, and it was really painful. They were in these harnesses overnight, and they asked him how that felt, and Larry said, "Life is a river of pain."
True.
Larry Evans. I got all Larry Evans stories.
So,
Closer to the mic.
so I met Judy. I don't really remember the first time I met Judy. We were working on headwaters up in northern Humboldt, and we'd been working on that since late '86. And sometime in '88, Daryl blew in. He was kind of the bloodstream. He kind of kept us connected to activists down in Mendocino, and because we were kind of doing our own thing up in Northern Humboldt. And he told us about this amazing woman he'd met. And, Daryl was always kind of like, hyperbolic a little bit. So he kind of blew it off a little bit, going, oh, it's just Daryl. And then we met her over time and realized that Daryl was right about Judy's power and her abilities. And we started working with her. What's that?
Nothing.
We started working with her. And the first time I remember working with Judy is a year in, we were starting to plan for Redwood Summer. And we were fairly far along. This is in the spring. And we had a big meeting out behind the elementary school at Garberville. And it was a big public meeting because we'd done all our internal kind of pre-planning to how we were going to start organizing. So this is one of the first open organizing meetings. And there were a lot of people there. We were doing our thing and talking about it and bringing people along with what we had in mind. And as we were leaving, there was a lot of people, just milling around discussing things. And someone said something to Judy about her kids. And later we kind of determined this guy was some kind of provocateur because, he kind of drifted in and said some things to other people that were kind of, off kilter. And he said something about Judy's kids. And I just remember hearing kind of out of the side of my eye. And then I kind of caught her in midair as she leapt for his throat because he'd said the wrong thing. He'd said something, very,
He didn't want there to be childcare for Redwood Summer, and he felt that people who had kids just had to, that.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
but
You're gonna
but he
say what
also
he said.
but he kind of questioned, her.
I'm sorry your old man dumped you and left you with the kids.
Yeah, it was
Right.
just and questioning her ability as a mother. So anyway, that's the first big remembrance I have of Judy is catching her midair before she took this guy's throat out.
To protect everybody from us.
Yeah. Daryl mentioned that how I kind of got into doing the bodyguard stuff. I'd done some bodyguarding. Mostly I worked for a company that did, bouncing. I worked at all these punk clubs in Hollywood in the late 70s. And then, and did some bodyguarding. And then I went to the woods, and I was always a part-time fanatic. I worked trails, so I'd go off, and I was in Redwood Summer, and I didn't do summer actions. I did stuff in the spring and the fall and the winter. I did a lot of work in the woods. I did a lot of the mapping that we needed. I ran the Midnight Guide service for Humboldt, for the Headwaters campaign, where we'd take people out there, and it was at night, so I rigged my truck so I could turn off the brake lights so we could stop it without having the brake lights go out. And so we'd take people out and walk them around Headwaters, and we had to go in at night. And that was kind of my part of what I did with for Headwaters. Then after the bombing, I didn't find out about the bombing for weeks because I was in the Immigrant Wilderness building trails. And I found out when I came out for something or other. And I was pretty shocked. And I almost left my job, even though that was my first season as a foreman, so I didn't because they were counting on me. And but later I came back, and somehow I ran into Judy, or we were at a thing together, and she mentioned she was going on a trip to do some speaking, and she asked if I'd go along with her, so I did. And she'd had some other bodyguards right after the bombing when she first moved in at Willits, I think Robert Parker and some other people. And, I'm sure it was pretty scary, a lot scarier than later down the road. Although later down the road, it could get pretty creepy. Even if it was just all in our heads, it was pretty real. So I traveled with her on speaking tours. We went to Olympia, Washington. We did Santa Barbara. We did some conference down there. We did this, the first Gulf War. There was a big rally in Santa Rosa, and she spoke at that big rally for the first Gulf War. And then we did a lot of other smaller things, like at what's that place in Berkeley, that organizing space?
Ashkenaz?
Maybe.
La Peña?
La Peña. We did some gigs there, and did gigs with Black Panthers, American Indian Movement, Independentistas from Puerto Rico, and Judy understood intersectionality long before any of us ever heard that word. She understood that all these oppressive systems of this culture that we live in, all worked in the same way to keep people down. And she understood that one struggle was another. And one thing she always said that has stayed with me forever is that if you want people to work and be interested in your issues, then work on their issues. And so she, I remember one time when she represented some mill workers at the GP mill, I think it was, that were caught in a horrible what's that stuff?
PCB.
PCBs. It's stuff that was in like a converter, an electrical converter, and the thing broke open, and they were doused in it, and their union wouldn't back them up, but so she represented them at the National Labor Relations Board hearing to get them some compensation. So she understood this stuff way before everybody else. Judy was a four-dimensional person. You know, she had, she was contentious. It was like her stock in trade to contend, and she was very good at it. And like most of us, her greatest strengths were also her greatest weakness. So sometimes she was contentious more than I think was necessary. However, she always had a very well thought out logical case for why she was contending things. So you might disagree, but it was never because it was mindless contention. It wasn't that way. But she's contentious, and there's no question about it. She's courageous. Not because she is fearless, because she is in fear a lot. As we traveled, we talk about this stuff and her fears. And, you know, aside from the grueling, massive, horrifying pain that she's in all the time after the bombing, which, you know, sapped her will and her spirit and her strength, nevertheless, she kept going because she's also stubborn, and she's going to be, you know, she was not going to allow herself to be victimized and bullied, so she fought against it. She didn't like, or at least in one conversation, she didn't really care for doing the FBI case because she realized it was a distraction and took her away from the regular organizing. But she understood it was absolutely necessary to do that work in order to further our cause of protecting activists and not letting these people get away with this stuff. I made notes too. Well, she was super smart. She was super passionate. You know, she was a brilliant strategic analyst, and she thought strategically about what she did and what we were doing. I remember one time we had a little argument. Up north, we'd come up with this log export campaign because a lot of the logs that were coming out of headwaters were getting shipped to Japan and sunk into the ocean where they were going to keep them until they needed them. And so it wasn't even fueling mill jobs up there. And so we were going to do a log exports thing. We made a bunch of silent agitators, and she just didn't like the campaign the way we did it because we had like Uncle Sam going, American logs for American jobs. And we were sticking them up in all the truck stops all up and down 101. Everywhere that the truck stops, we were sticking them over every urinal every time we went up and down. And we really plastered them because we were trying to cause dissension. What's that?
Every urinal.
Every urinal. Absolutely. Right above it, right where they'd see it when they're standing there. And they couldn't get away. I mean, you know, they were a captive audience. And so we were doing that. She just didn't like the jingoistic tone of the thing. And, you know, we discussed it and we finished it out. It was kind of a limited grant kind of thing. We got rid of our stickers and we were done. But, you know, so she was thinking beyond just our campaign. I still think it was kind of a good idea because it did cause a little dissension, but I totally get where she was coming from, what she meant. She was uncomfortable with celebrity. Partially because, you know, who wants to be under the spotlight like that? But the other part is that she saw it as a distraction, and also it had a propensity to encourage inaction among other people because they say, oh, the heroes are taking care of it. And she saw that as a problem, so she liked to downplay, you know, the superhero aspect, even though she was kind of a superhero. A lot of what, you know, we'd spend a lot of time on the road, and so we'd just be, and you know, we'd talk about, you know, what's the big, where are we going with all this? Where are we trying to get to? And you know, basically, her larger concern is how can we have a sane, humane society in balance with the natural world that, you know, that's the natural habitat for us two-leggeds. And so we talked about how are we going to get there, and realizing we were not going to, you know, cause a revolution to get there, but that we were, you know, pebbles in the pond, and we were sending out these waves that were going to change the society over time, hopefully in time. At this point, I don't think so, but that's okay. Still planting seeds for how we move forward as you know, as a species. So how do we get there? We had a meeting one time in Laytonville at the old recycling center just north of town, and it was a meeting to discuss whether we were going to leave Earth First and become our own thing or not. And we never came to any good conclusions because nobody really wanted to put forward a strong opinion, because the bottom line was that we all realized as we went through this process that whatever we did, that was going to come down on her. The weight was she was going to have to carry the burden. If we stayed with Earth First, she was going to have to deal with those burdens, and if we left, she was going to have to deal with those burdens. And we would all step in to shoulder our share of the work, but ultimately, we all knew that she was going to bear the burden, and that was rough. It made it hard to think strategically and tactically, because that celebrity kind of muddled things a little bit. Sure. Okay. Well, over time, she she just decided to persevere. I talked to her after she got her diagnosis. The last time I talked, I called her up to say goodbye. And so, she wasn't afraid at that point. She was worried for her kids. She was always worried for her kids. In fact, she was worried the whole time about, whether what she was doing was best for her kids or not. But, we discussed the fact that if there's no decent earth to live on, the kids aren't going to have a very good time anyway. So even though they kind of had to shoulder some of the load too, they also, they were always at the front of her mind for what she was doing. So it's kind of one of those things, if you're very active and you have kids, it's like any job you're passionately involved in, you gotta make choices. And so she made tough choices, but always with her kids in mind. And I can testify that I know that they were the first thing she thought of for every decision she came to. She's a great mom. I remember going out and picking curtain fabric for her new cabin in Willits, just when I was bodyguarding her. And a lot of times I'd bodyguard her on these things, but other times she'd just kind of feel like things were funky and she'd call and I'd just come and hang out for a while. So, a lot of times it's just to hang out and be her friend when things were weird. Things were weird a lot, death threats. A bunch of us got this, we called it the mail merge death threat, where we all got this death threat that said, "Dear," then it was kind of fill in the blank, "faggot" or "lesbian, you are blah, blah, blah." And they kind of, they made it gender specific for all of us. And, but it was definitely mail merge because we all got the same one, but there's these different things that they changed about it. So we all thought that was pretty funny at the time, and then it got unfunny real soon after, because that one came about 6 or 9 months before Redwood Summer, and then and then they started coming in, and the things like the crosshairs over her face. That was a pretty gnarly one. And then just the phone calls. And, being with her on these trips and getting kind of mobbed by people. And she was kind of fragile or delicate. She didn't have good balance after the bombing because she was crippled up that way. So that was always a concern. Anyway, Judy was amazing. Sure damn glad I knew her. And we could use a bunch of her right now.
Larry Evans. Naomi Wagner, who worked with Judy side by side for what seemed like forever. From born and raised in Humboldt, right?
I wasn't born, but I was raised.
Raised in Humboldt, and also has a place right here in Willits, or nearby. Sherwood?
Spring Creek.
Yeah, there you go, Spring Creek.
Judy was Spring Creek. I'm in Spring Creek.
So Naomi Wagner.
Thank you, Daryl. Wow, I am so happy to be part of this panel, and I'll be happy to be here for the next events too, because I'm learning so much. Remembering Judy, I've been remembering her. She's not somebody that you would forget easily. I don't know anybody else that has won a lawsuit against the FBI posthumously, from the grave, literally, as you just heard. She made that happen, and it was never appealed. And I want to say that that actually has, I believe, had a long-term effect on the movement here and allowed us to survive and maybe to thrive even. And because we really told the infiltrators and the disruptors where to go, and straight to hell, basically. Don't come here because we're on to you and we know your MO. And one of the things I was remembering about, I want to give a shout out to Betty Ball. I'm so glad you mentioned her. Wow, without Betty and Gary, we would not have saved Headwaters. And we did a lot of organizing out of the MEC at that time, also out of the WEC. But Judy, by winning that lawsuit, basically it said, do not disrupt us anymore. We have this on you. And during Redwood Summer, a lot of times people would come to the MEC, and we had this flood of videographers from LA, and they were all like wanting to help the movement, right? But actually they were infiltrators and disruptors in not very much disguise. And you could kind of tell after a while if you talked to them, like they didn't really have their equipment together, they didn't have contacts. People just swarmed in and they didn't realize that they actually needed a reference, and most people were great, but some were certainly not. And we don't really have that as much anymore, knock on wood. Another thing that protects us from that is the nonviolence code and our practice, because if people come in and say that they want to do things like equipment sabotage or like things that don't line up with our guidelines, we can identify them and we can say, look, you need to check this out and get, line up with our guidelines. Or if sometimes they're like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize, and then they do line up with it, but other times they persist, or they'll take people off from the group and try to split people away from the group and not really be an affinity group, but just, say, hey, these, those nonviolent people, they're just wusses. We got that quite a bit. They're not really radical, and so you should come with me and do these other things. But, thinking about Judy, I've been thinking about her so much lately. And all the things that you've all said are so true and so poignant. I thought of so many stories about Judy and tried to pick one. It was really hard. I want to say something about the way she fought with not just with the movement against the ravages of the timber industry, but she also fought in the movement, inside the movement. And really, it's thanks to Judy that Earth First has been feminized, and it is now a feminist-friendly movement, a woman-friendly movement, and has many female leaders. It wasn't always that way. So Judy was not afraid to take on people inside the movement, the Dave Foreman, the Foremanistas, we call them, and they called us all kinds of names too. But she did that simultaneously with fighting the timber companies and being in the media and doing all the other things that she did. I actually thought of one story that kind of typifies Judy in a lot of different ways. As you've heard about her connection to labor, she came from labor organizing. She knew a tremendous amount about it. And I was always amazed at how much she just knew, even though she was 5 years younger than I am, but or was at the time, but she definitely had a lot more experience. And I spent a lot of time driving with her at her house, organizing on the phone. I didn't know, Alicia, that you came to the movement a year and met me at the WEC. I thought I met you there. But so getting a little more chronology. And after the bombing, after Judy had recovered enough to be out on the road, I also drove with her. She drove, actually. She was an incredible driver. But she needed someone with her. And she had been invited to do an interview with David Barsamian down at KPFA in the city. And so we drove down there, and we were running a little late. And Judy was actually a very punctual person and had a fantastic memory in spite of that she smoked a lot of pot. A lot, but that was her pain medication. She didn't do opioids. Yeah, there are more stories about that. But she managed to, she kept it together. And so we drove down there, and it was getting really, time was kind of tight. But Judy, she was always, one for workers' rights, right? So we had to eat. And no matter what, I had to eat lunch. Well, so we went to a little restaurant, and I ordered something she didn't eat. But I had to. And so I kind of gulped it down, and then off we went, limping down the street, and we went to KPFA. And we go in, and it's this big cavern-like place. And there are these, there's a metal staircase that goes up to like the second floor. And we talked to the secretary, and she's called up to the office and said we were there. And we waited a while, and then the phone rang again. This is, of course, before cell phones. You have to know that. Because, that was a different era. So then apparently David Barsamian's ready to do the interview, and Judy wanted to do it by herself. I knew that she didn't want anyone there, it would be distracting, so I was just prepared to wait. And she goes laboriously up the stairs one by one, and I know how much pain she's in. And she goes in, and I'm surprised to see the door open after a very short time, maybe a few minutes, and she comes back down the stairs even more laboriously, and she is looking grim. And she says, "Let's go." I'm like, okay. So we get going, and she says, there was a mix-up. It was the wrong time. The interview was I think it was just off. And I could just tell by the set of her jaw that she was furious, because not only was the interview called off, it didn't happen, but he seemed unaware of her disability, that she had had to climb those stairs up and down. They could have just called, he could have come down. And that was the kind of discrimination that you could see in sensitivity. And I'm sure David Barsamian's a great guy and a great interviewer and probably had no intention of that, but was just completely unaware. Well, that wasn't the end of the story. So we drive out of the city, and we get up into someplace in Sonoma County, and Judy turns off. I don't remember where this was. And we turn off, we drive down a little kind of country road, and we get to this diner. And it's this like a trailer out kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's got vines growing on it. She must have known this place.
The Wheel.
Oh, was that it?
The Wheel in Cloverdale.
All right, thank you, Daryl. So I didn't know what it was. Great, thanks for filling me in. So we go in, we park, and we go in there, and the place there's stools up at the counter, and the place is full of redneck guys, and they're wearing T-shirts with American flags on them, and they've got their caps on backwards, and they're a bunch of dudes, and Judy just bellies right up to the counter. We sit down. I'm like feeling a little like, whoa, what's gonna happen? She starts bantering with them. She starts joking with them. Pretty soon she's got them joking back. And this goes on for a little while, and she gets them really laughing. She had a great sense of humor. They don't know we're wearing Earth First T-shirts, right? We're wearing this Earth First T-shirt. Okay, so they got their flags. We got our Earth First T-shirts. And she keeps on joking around, and finally she goes, "So, have you ever really tasted a spotted owl? Have you ever eaten one?" Because this was back in the day when they had these really vile T-shirts that said, "Save a logger, eat a spotted owl." And spotted owls taste just like chicken and stuff. So she says this to them, and they're like, there was a moment of total silence. And then they burst out laughing. And then all of a sudden, it was like she had created an affinity group of the radical T-shirt wearers. It didn't matter what your T-shirt was. If you had something on your T-shirt that said, "I'm this, and I'm standing for it, and I'm proud," you had an affinity. And we did. She made friends with those people. She went into a whole spiel that she was going to give to David Barsamian about sustainable forestry, about jobs and trees, and how you're cutting yourself out of a job, and how the government sucks, which they all agreed to. And pretty soon we're friends. She made her case. She did not ever give it up. And I think that probably it fell in the ears of a better audience than maybe the KPFA audience that already agreed with her. Well, so it's still not the end of the story. She says they're all, now eating out of her hand, and they offer to pay for our meal. Judy's like, "No way." She pulls out $100 bills out of her jeans. She goes, "My Earth First riches." She says, "Now you too can pay. If you want to pay for something, you can donate. I'll take donations." and they'd give her money. We walk to the door, they see that she's limping, and those redneck, beer belly, t-shirt wearing guys, chivalrous guys, open the door for her and walk her to the car and help her into the car. And we say goodbye, and we're like, oh, see you later. I just think that that so typifies Judy, that she never gave up. And even though she had, she drove 6 hours down there and back in pain, and to be told and treated quite disrespectfully and sensitively, and then she just like pulled it out. And we went home, we were happy, we smoked some, and we were happier, and it was all good. So I just love that story, and I think I'll just leave it at that, because you're going to hear a lot more.
Thank you, Naomi. That was awesome. I just want to point out about the wheel is that I used to go to the wheel a lot with Judy. It was right outside of Cloverdale. It closed before the owl.
The owl.
There was the owl, but there was the wheel, which was much more my favorite, our favorite. It was all shiny stainless steel, and it was off the beaten path in Cloverdale. You had to make a left turn, you had to go west, and then off to a side road. We loved that place, and it closed down before the owl did. So,
Well, thanks for validating that, Daryl, because I thought maybe I dreamed it.
no. I love that place. I was so heartbroken. Daphne Martin, an old friend of mine, and of course of Judy's. I thought I met Daphne at the Albion Nation uprising, but she says something different that she may or may not tell you about. But Daphne is definitely one of the. Judy loved Daphne as a powerful woman and a mom, and just a true to the cause. And so, without any further explanation, Daphne Martin from Albion.
Thank you. Okay, like that. All right. Well, I'm not much of a public speaker, so stay with me for a minute. How I met Judy and Daryl was I went to get my first Toyota truck with a neighbor of mine on H Road, an infamous Redfern, who knew a lady in Ukiah that we could stay at and go through all the daily want ads and find a good truck for me. And it turned out to be Sequoia up on Greenfield Ranch. And boy, what a wild night that was. And so that was, I think it was probably about 1988, and it might have been 87. So we went up to Sequoia's house, way up through there, and Sequoia, the wild woman that she was, and Rick, the wild man that he was, they were sparking and having a great old time. So I'm sitting downstairs in this tiny little house, waiting for the hot tub outside, which was an old bathtub, to heat up, so I could go out there and give them their space. And Sequoia had a stack of Earth First journals. So I started reading them, and I was floored. I was blown away. These were my people. I mean, I have been in the woods all my life. I had, I walked in the woods, I mushroom, I've hunted, I've fished, I've done it all. But I came from a different perspective than a redneck. A lot of like all the old Earth First people did in the Southwest. And in the back, I asked Sequoia, I said, how do I reach these people? And as it was before all of the new technology communications, she said, look in the back. And so I looked in the back, and there was Mendocino Earth First, and it had Daryl Cherney and Judy Bari there, and an address. I think it was a P.O. box, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was my P.O. box. Anyway, I wrote to them, and I said I was very moved by this whole group of you that I've never heard of before, and I would like to meet you, and I would like to do something. I was searching for some service to do for Mother Earth. And Judy wrote me back right away and said that Daryl and she were going to play at the Casper Inn. Peter Litt, who was the proprietor of the Casper Inn, was a great supporter of you guys. And so in a couple of weeks when it happened, I went to the Casper Inn, and I went up to Judy and said, "I'm Daphne," and I wrote you, and she was, "Oh yes, I was so glad you came," and introduced me to Daryl, who doesn't remember, but that's okay. And from then on, it was a very loving and welcoming friendship, and a rowdy one and a funny one. And Judy was a Scorpio, and she was an absolute wonderful Scorpio, and I love Scorpio women. And she loved me. She just thought I was the greatest thing, which was really good for me because I was very reclusive at that time. And I was raising my daughter, Ayana, and who's the same age as her daughter, Lisa, or close. We hit it off, and we started, I started doing actions, more like rallies with her and stuff. And I lived out in the pygmy forest with no water or electricity and no phone. And Judy would call Captain Fathom, who a lot of people know, and say, "Fathom, go down and tell Daphne to call me." And so Fathom would come, "Hey!" You know how he was, and knock on my door and say, "You have to call Judy right now." So I'd get in the car and I'd drive down to the phone booth at the Albion store, and I'd call Judy, and she would tell me what was happening and where to meet her, and off we'd go. And I had many times with Judy. I also did, when you were probably not available, did bodyguarding for her. I've lost a couple inches in my old age, but I was taller, and Judy was, if anyone doesn't know, she was a tiny little woman. And she loved the way I towered over her. And so she would walk into a place and she'd have me walk right behind her, and it was like, you know, with my hair and stuff, and it was fun, and we had a great time. And we went up to Reed College in Oregon once for one of her talking tours. And Judy, these are a lot, it's hard to get into Reed College, or was at that time. And Judy always had plenty of Humboldt weed with her that was great. And she would roll these bombers, and she would smoke. And I was nervous as hell, you know, with all these brilliant kids around us and everything, and tried to have to stand back because she'd just puff away and go. And then she went out and spoke to all these kids, and I, with great respect, say kids, and they asked really hard questions about organizing and labor and everything, and she just aced it. She was amazing. It was like it gave her, I don't know how to say, she could speak beautifully anyway, but she was amazing. She was a crazy, wonderful, well-spoken, amazing woman. It's very emotional. I couldn't look at a picture of her until about 3 years ago. It really upset me. There was a lot to, I'm glad to do this here. That was bringing up a lot of memories. It's the first time I've seen the car. I rode in that car a lot. I would go down sometimes with them on stuff, but she said, "Oh no, Judy and Daryl had it. They were going to stay in Oakland, and I hated to stay in any other people's houses." So I said, "No, I guess I'm not." And she goes, "Nah, just stay home." And then it happened the next morning. We were at Touchstone in Albion, which was a community center that we ran for the kids, and somebody said, "Hey, Daph, isn't that your friend Judy?" And there was a picture of her they were getting her out of the car on the gurney, and it was just, everything stopped. And I looked at Ayana, and Ayana looked at me, and we knew we had to go. And it was I had migraines for a couple of years after it. It was a very intense time. But before Judy got bombed, here's a Kay Rudin story. They brought the Feller Buncher to Perry Gulch in between Elk, Greenwood Ridge, and the Navarro River. Well, it actually comes down, the North Fork of the South Fork comes down the Perry Gulch there. And Kay and Judy, I don't know if you all know what a feller buncher is, but it's a large tree cutting machine that actually was supposed to replace the fallers from doing it. It had a huge thing and it sawed around these big massive logs, and then it would pick it up and stack it. It was a frightening, absolutely scary machine. I mean, it was, I couldn't go down. I sat up on the thing, and Kay and Judy went down there, and the whole time they're going down there, and this machine, we could barely hear it, but they're yelling back and forth. Kay saying, I'm a vegetarian, I can go farther than you. And Judy saying, well, I eat meat, I can go farther than you. And so this was just this whole banter going back and forth, and I'm sitting up here shivering in my boots because I went totally feral when I saw that machine. And it was just amazing. She was hilarious. She had, you could be in a serious situation and she could crack a joke that would just break the ice and just have us doing it. She could also be very afraid, like you all said, and that was when we were there for her. And I felt very honored that she felt the strength of my presence, and that I gave her strength by being there. And there's a lot of stories I have. I was there with one of the, we were at her house when one of the crosshair came in the mail, which she wasn't supposed to open. But I remember she had this Mao Zedong clock that she made, and it would go click, click,
With his
click,
hands.
right, with his hands and stuff. And I remember after we saw it and we looked at it, and all we could hear was the click, 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 and it was really frightening. And I don't know where I was going to go with that one. It's so hard. We used to travel a lot also. She traveled with a lot of us. She loved to travel. She did it in pain. And we'd sing a lot. And the kids, and from, down to stems and seeds again, to Daryl figuring out the words of LPO, what it was going to be coming back from Santa Rosa. And I have other ones that I want to say too, but I'm feeling a little nervous. Saying goodbye to Judy was very hard. She had, I think it was the Willis Auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
How soon before she died was that?
What was that? It was probably December?
It was it seemed she was very, very frail by then. And
The Bari special evening.
it was a very
Yes,
special
right.
evening.
The Bari special
The
evening.
very special evening,
I
right?
know it's not.
And I remember her biggest concern, sat with her, and her biggest concern were her daughters. And I said, well, your daughters will be well taken care of. She had everybody in the wings for that. And I said, my sadness is that we won't be able to get old together. And we just hugged and held each other. And to this day, it's so hard, because we all now, it's 30 years later, we're old, we're gray. I was blonde once, he was dark-haired once. And Judy's not here with us with her beautiful auburn hair, and she didn't get to get gray with us. And I miss her. I miss her a lot. Thank you.
Daphne Martin. I have Bill Heil and Linda Perkins in that order, and they're going to share a mic and tell Judy's story or two or three. And then after them, if people either have questions or want to share their own stories, we would be happy to turn a mic over to you as well. So Bill and Linda, it's been wonderful knowing you since Albion Nation, and it's all yours.
Phew. Am I live here?
Well, more or less.
Okay. This is pretty hard to follow. I'm humbled, and I speak for, don't want to speak for us,
Both of
to
us.
be in the same panel as these people who really were close to Judy and spent a lot more time with her than we got to spend. We were on the coast, as was Daphne, but I think back in that day, Earth First was just one more group that we definitely cheered on, but felt that they were inland from us. And it was the Enchanted Meadow uprising that brought us together. And it was a very special time for us. We got to, Judy came to help us, and Judy and the Willits, Earth First people, came over to the Albion Nation, and helped foment a real uprising where the whole community joined in. But for those couple of years, we were very close with Judy.
Yeah, we met Judy when the Enchanted Meadow Albion Nation Earth First Uprising was happening, and we met her at the home of the photographer who took a lot of photographs of it all. Video photographer, other than Kay, was Nick Wilson, and we met at his home with Judy. Judy said to us, well, you know, we appreciate that you were out there yesterday and that you helped put up the tree sit. But my question to you is, are you going to be here for the long haul? And Bill and I looked at each other, and we looked back at Judy, and we sort of gulped and nodded tentatively, but we were in. She was a very powerful person. I thought to myself, this woman means business. And I've thought to myself many times since then that was the understatement of the century. And Judy, I think one of the things that we really shared with Judy was that she had been afraid, and that she was afraid, and justifiably so. She had been through a horror, and she wasn't always sure who she could trust. And she turned to Bill and me, I think, because she did feel that sense of trust of us as community members. And we were already gray-haired by that point, figuratively anyway, because we were raising a grandson, and very busy with other aspects of our lives. But she kind of dragged us into it, and and now we're great-grandparents, and we're still here, and very grateful for that. And I guess, you know, there's things about Judy, but that she shared with us that she was afraid, and that she trusted us, made us, of course, love her very much, that she could share that with us. And then maybe we'll just, I don't know, Bill, if you want to tell some stories, but...
There's a couple.
Yeah, and where should we start?
Well, I want to say, you know, what the Albion Uprising for Judy was the first protest that she'd been in after the bombing, where she felt that the people around her were strong and on her side and were willing to protect her, and she didn't have to be afraid of us. And that was a real honor too, actually. And a couple of things that happened over the course. One was, which one shall I tell? We didn't make any notes, but we did talk about a couple of incidents.
So you'll get to see us fight it out up here in front of the cameras.
The first was that Judy arranged for us after the first go-round with Louisiana Pacific to attend Highlander Institute in Tennessee, which both of us were from the South, and had grown up during that whole tumultuous period of the 60s and civil rights, and were never really quite aware of the history that had gone on in the South. And Miles Horton, who was the founder of
The
Highlander Institute, was one of the people that trained and brought people together to understand the kind of stuff that Judy learned from the labor movement. he was pushing as well from just his understanding of bringing people together, I would say. And it was very exciting. She got us a scholarship to attend. We were able to go back south, visit our relatives, attend that, then come back with a real appreciation for what was going on in the country, and that there were people like us in other places. And that was really nice.
And just to tell, I think, a final story about an action that we did with Judy. We were still fighting Louisiana Pacific in different forms. And at one point, they came into a forest in Albion, and they were literally scraping up the forest floor. They would take a machine and drive it around and nudge a log, and if the log didn't... Deadwood, yeah, down log. It'd been there a long time. And if it didn't disintegrate, they would pick it up, but it wasn't big enough. These were old, crumbling logs. It wasn't big enough to put onto a logging truck, so they put them into dumpsters to take away. And so, of course, we called it a dumpster logging, and had a great deal of fun just with that term. But Judy had not been out on an action in the woods since she had been bombed. And we decided that since these dumpsters were in a semi-accessible place in the woods, that it might be a fun thing to take Judy out and see these dumpsters and what they were doing, and maybe do a little work on the dumpsters while we were out there. So one night we went into the woods, Judy crutching her way along. I don't know who else was with us. Were you there, Alicia?
I must have been.
You must have been. And we went into the woods where these dumpsters were, and of course we had our cans of spray paint, and we decorated the dumpsters with all kinds of nice LP sucks, but some flowers and some peace and love and LP out, and and Judy sat there on a log while the people were doing this and just laughed and laughed and laughed. And then we came out of the woods and we thought, well, we'll never know quite what happens to those dumpsters. But I was involved with commenting on timber harvest plans, and I was in touch with CDF people, California Department of Forestry people. And I went to some review team meeting, and one of the Cal Fire inspectors, the CDF inspector, said, well, he said, I was coming to work this morning and I saw this dumpster being hauled down the road, and it had LP sucks on it. He says, I know where that came from. And he just cracked up. And so that was the end of the story, and we felt really honored that we were able to be out with Judy and do something like that. Yeah.
Thank you, too. Before we open this up, I want to just let people know a few formalities. One, I brought a bunch of swag with me, some Who Bombed Judy Bari DVDs, and some CDs of our music, as well as one copy of Judy's book, Timber Wars. And they're all just for donation only, any amount. My two friends, Danny and the Holy Trinity over there, will be happy to take any donation. And we're putting that money to giving people lodging, and also to help pay Chad and Jamie for doing this amazing video work that they're doing here. A quick mention on the schedule. Next Friday, October 1st, from 6 to 8, the museum is going to actually be open till 8 o'clock, past their bedtime. Right? And we're going to have it's songs by and about Judy Bari with Alicia Littletree, Francine and Amaya, Mokai, Rosebud Ireland, maybe Bud Guts, Bear Dyken, myself and Edie Morris, and also Ellen Taylor. The following Sunday, October 10th, so 9 days later, October 10th, Judy Bari versus the FBI, and discussion with the legal team, including Dennis Cunningham and Ben Rosenfeld, along with legal assistants Josh Morcell and Alicia Littletree, juror Mary Nunn, and myself. And then October 30th, we're going to have the day of the bombing. What was it like on the day? I'm sorry, October 20th. It's a Wednesday from 5:30 to 7:30 in the evening. The day of the car bombing. First-hand accounts with myself and Karen Pickett, who was just instrumental beyond belief. Plus Agnes Patak will be there, who covered it for K-Mud. And then on Sunday, we're closing out our series, our panels, like Sunday, October 24th, which is the final day of this exhibit. With Building Bridges with Timber Workers, Union Organizing and Earth First with Timber Workers, Ernie Pardini, Art Harwood, and Walter Smith, so actual, like, loggers, as well as IWW Union activist and author Steve Ungerth, and myself. And then there's a little bonus panel, or bonus Zoom, I think, on Wednesday, October 27th, a book discussion of Timber Wars, Judy Barry's book, with the Cultural Services Agency Director, Deb Fader. And all this stuff is on the Mendocino County Museum website. Just Google Mendocino County Museum. You'll get right to the website, and you can find all of this stuff. And we have a few other tables here. Are the Friends of the Museum here as well? Are they? I don't know. Okay, very good. As I was, I'm sorry I didn't make copies of this, but I do have it on my computer. I needed to get some old paperwork, like birth certificate type stuff for something I was filling out. And in my wallet, my wallet from like 25 or 30 years ago, I found this, and I just have to share it with everybody. I'm going to come up front. I blew out, if you'll pardon the expression. This is Judy Barry's.
Expanded.
I scanned it. And this is Judy Barry's business card from before she moved here. Self-portrait. Wow. It's from when she did sign painting for storefronts. And Judy was an amazing artist, a cartoonist, and a graphic artist.
Alvarado cat. Wasn't that logo hers?
Oh, really? She did the button. If you look at the button, she did Warrior Woman on the jacket. She did that button. Judy was an artist. Period.
Yep.
And a funny one too. She did a whole series of newsletters.
She did this sign.
She did that sign.
Freehand.
And she also did a sign, a banner I have that says "Save the Old Growth," and she hand stitched the framing around it.
You
the
have that
framing
banner?
around it.
Wow.
She had amazing talents. And so I just wanted to share this with you.
Wow.
It's a self-portrait. I don't know if there's any other self-portraits of Judy Barry. So that's a really good one there.
You can throw it as a banner.
All right. Oh, wow. All right.
This is from the early 1980s when she lived in Santa Rosa. And
Wow.
Are there
Wow.
any
Show it to the camera.
questions or comments or anything? What? Any questions or comments?
Would anybody else like to say something about Judy?
Any thoughts or questions or comments, stories? Endless.
Well, while you guys are thinking about it, I wanted to give a shout out to our allies from Coyote Valley who are here. Thank you, Michael. And also to our forest defenders that are defending Jackson Forest right now. They're also over here. The legacy of Judy Barry.
Can I just say the first time I ever went to Coyote Valley was because Priscilla invited Judy to participate in the bear dance, and Judy brought me to that. And it's this wild memory, and I know it happened. It did happen. But it's a very dreamlike. I mean, well, you would have been like. I mean, I was little. I was like 20, 21. It would have been. It was a long time ago, but I mean, I remember it. Anyway, so there was long time relationship there with Judy.
A lot of the experiences of Judy seem like a dream in some way. It's like, you know, as I said earlier, like, did that happen? What was that? I remember, you know, Judy was a brown belt in karate, and she had the nickname from the East Coast Punchin' Judy because she had broken 2 noses when she worked for the post office. Yes, we did. One man grabbed her breast in the lunchroom, in the post office lunchroom, and she took his head and slammed it into her fist, and got the name Punchin' Judy. And one time she decided to give me a karate lesson, and so we put on boxing gloves, and she told me to hit her, and I just couldn't bring myself to hit her. And then she went ahead and punched me right in the face, and she said, "That's the problem with you, Daryl. You just don't have the killer instinct."
Thank you, Daryl.
Good. I think that's perfect, actually.
We would love to hang out and schmooze with everybody. And if that's it, Beth Bosk is here. I know Beth has amazing experiences with Judy. Interviewed her for New Settler. And I see Rosebud is here, who's going to be performing next week. Hope I'm not revealing your presence because you might be swarmed by your fans, but there she is. And Artemisia, my old singing partner, has something to say.
First one.
Info about tax.
Do you want to sing on the mic?
The Earth First table.
Here, just hold it like this. Okay.
Say, the Earth's First table in the back there has information about the fight that's going on to save Jackson for us right now. And it's a struggle that all of us in Mendocino and in California should be bringing ourselves up to date on, because what's happening in Jackson is incredibly important. They are doing some really poor logging, and it's the deal where Cal Fire thinks they own Jackson State. They do manage it, and having the people that fight fire manage the state forest, and their only goal is to get money out of it, is not right for its owners, who are us, for the people of California. And we have to change the mandate by which it's governed. It was bought in the 1940s, and it was to show that second growth redwood logs were valuable, and that's still what they're doing, is showing that they're economically valuable. And it defies what a definition of a forest really is. And so make sure you get up to date on what's going on with that. SaveJackson.org is a good place to look, and talk to the people over here. And thank you for your support on that, because we'll need it.
Oh, so I was lucky enough to get to perform with Judy a few times at places like the Berkeley Unitarian Fellowship or stuff. And once upon a time, I came up with Karen Pickett to Richardson Grove. We were meeting Judy there, and we were going to co-facilitate what we expected to be a tense meeting between her and another woman activist that they were really not getting along on some important crack. But that meeting got canceled, so we got to sit around and play tunes by the fire instead, which was really amazing. And if I could take like 1 minute. She taught me this chant. This wasn't a chant that she wrote, but it's a chant that she taught me, and if you know it or if you don't know it, feel free to sing along, all right? It has a repeating pattern. Humble yourself in the eyes of the redwoods. Lay down low and humble yourself in the eyes of the redwoods. You got to learn what they know, and we shall lift each other up higher and higher, and we shall lift each other up. Humble yourself in the eyes of the elders. Lay down low and humble yourself in the eyes of the elders. You've got to learn what they know, and we shall lift each other up higher and higher, and we shall lift each other up. Humble yourself in the eyes of the tree frogs. Lay down low and humble yourself in the eyes of the tree frogs. You got to learn what they know, and we shall lift each other up higher and higher, and we shall lift each other up.
Oh! Artemisia, who I know from Church of All Worlds and Earth First. Beth Bosk, would you like to come up and say something? just speak in here. Yeah, just come right here, hold that up, and give her a whirl.
I interviewed Judy Bari twice. Once a month before she was blown up, her car was blown up. And we discussed her attitude about violence. And she said she understood it when others did it in other places, but this place here was not a place to use it as a tactic in any form, especially at the time Earth First was being accused of tree spiking. New Settler was a relatively new publication at the time, and I had a new radio station had opened 6 months before, and because KZYX&Z, yeah. And I was the only public affairs person. I had a two-hour show in the afternoon, even the afternoon, real, womanly kind of thing I view on what was going on in the county. And at the time, down in the city, when Judy was blown up, Judy and Daryl, people actually believed the FBI that she had planted the bomb. No, but this investigation by the FBI engineer who worked it out was nowhere in sight at that time. And so what I did was I sent my tape, my only tape no, I guess it wasn't. I sent a copy of the tape down to the city for the public radio station there to broadcast what she had said during that 1 hour interview as we talked about her role in contemporary history. So the FBI shows up at the station on a day that I'm not there, and because I'm also running it on KZYX&Z, and they tell whoever is in the booth, we don't want to see anything else said about Judy Bari. We don't want you to read anything. We don't want you to refer to her. You're going to be in big trouble. Here, put this up on the window of your studio. And, like it was somebody who played music. Up it went. But they called me at home. And I knew nothing about radio law. He said, but because I was being sued by Louisiana Pacific, and I was defending myself kind of as a journalistic kind of person, I kind of had some legal vocabulary available to me. And so the guy said, Beth, what do I do? They won't let it, they put this thing up on the window. Do I tear it down or do I leave it up? And I said to him, that's prior restraint. That's against the Constitution. Tear the damn thing down. And he did, and the FBI never showed up again.
Thank you, Beth. We are just about out of time. Again, I want to thank Karen Madsen, the curator of the Mendocino County Museum, right there. Really, for this wonderful experience of being able to assist with curating a museum exhibit, especially of Judy Bari, but what a wonderful new experience. You can teach an old dog new tricks. And I want to thank, in order of the table here, Linda Perkins, Bill Heil, Daphne Martin, Naomi Wagner, Larry Evans, and there was a wonderful, there's a wonderful picture of Judy Bari, and I looked at this beautiful picture. I said, look at this beautiful picture of Judy standing in front of this wall, and I think Larry said, that's not a wall, that's me. Larry Evans, and Alicia Littletree. I'm Daryl Cherney. We'll be back next week.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. And feel free to go get some swag at any cost. And I also give special thanks to Danny and Trinity for helping out with my little section of table over there. Thank you very much.
In Mendocino County, one day New Kaya town, pro-life tried to close the family planning clinic down. Judy led the demonstration, saying sisters we can't lose control of our bodies and a woman's right to choose. They kept the clinic open and she carries on the fight to preserve the redwood forest and defend the workers' rights.